A client I work with built her business on expertise. Her clients trusted her implicitly. The referrals came consistently. She was genuinely exceptional at what she did. And the people she served knew it. And she was still the thing holding her business back, not because her skills were wrong, not because her clients were difficult, not because the market had shifted. She was the ceiling in her own business because of the way her operation was built, or more accurately, the way it had never been built at all. It had grown around her the way a plant grows around a trellis. Every system, every process, every touch point in the client experience ran through her personally. It was not a designed structure. It was just how things had accumulated over time. Here's what I found when I actually looked at her operation. Every client inquiry came in and sat in her inbox, waiting for her to respond personally. She was the only one who could answer questions the way she answered them. Every booking confirmation had to go through her. Every coordination step, communicating with vendors, managing logistics, following up on details, required her to be the one touching it. Every repetitive communication in the client cycle, the check-ins, the reminders, the thank yous, the follow-through after a completed engagement, those required her hands on them. On a good week, she was spending somewhere between 12 and 15 hours on tasks that had nothing to do with the expertise her clients were paying for. Hours she could not get back, hours that were not billable. Hours that were not building relationships or generating revenue, they were just keeping the operation alive. She was not bad at those tasks. She was excellent at them. Her clients experienced a level of personal attention that they loved and talked about. That was the problem, because that level of personal attention was not sustainable at scale, and more importantly, it did not require her expertise. It required her time. Her time was the most expensive resource in that business. Every hour she spent processing a confirmation was an hour she did not spend on a consultation that could have become a booked engagement that would have driven the revenue she was working 80-hour weeks trying to reach. This is what operational bleed looks like in a service business. Not failure, not dysfunction. Not a business that is broken. A business that is working exactly as it was built, functioning precisely as the owner designed it, and consuming the owner's highest value capacity doing work that does not require it. Operational bleed is invisible until you map it, because every individual task feels necessary. Of course, she should respond to inquiries. Of course, the confirmations matter. Of course, the follow-up is important. Each task, viewed in isolation, looks like the cost of doing business. When you look at all of them together and ask how many hours they are consuming and what else those hours could produce, the picture changes. We mapped every task that required her direct involvement, every single one. Then we asked one question for each. Does this task require her expertise or does it require her time? The mapping process is not complicated in concept. You sit with the owner and go through everything they touch in a given week, every email they send, every conversation they initiate, every process that requires their involvement in any form. You log it, you estimate the time, you ask the same question for each item. Is this task here because it genuinely requires your judgment, or is it here because no one else has been set up to handle it? For most tasks, the answer is the second one. Not because the owner is managing their time poorly, because the business grew around the owner's availability, and over time that availability became the default infrastructure. No one sat down and decided that the owner should personally touch every inquiry and every confirmation. It just happened that way. When the business was small, it was efficient. When the business grew, the pattern was already established. Removing yourself from tasks you have always handled requires intentional redesign. Most businesses never do that redesign because they are too busy operating the way the business currently works to step back and rebuild the operating layer underneath it. The other thing the mapping almost always reveals is that the owner was not aware of how much they were carrying. Most people can name the things they do. Very few can estimate the hours accurately before they track it. The difference between 12 and 15 hours per week on non-expertise tasks feels abstract until you see it written down with timestamps and calculate the dollar cost at the owner's effective hourly rate. That calculation changes the conversation entirely. It is no longer about whether the tasks are important. It is about what those hours cost when they are spent on work that does not command what your time is worth. Some tasks genuinely required her expertise. The consultation itself, the judgment calls that clients were paying for, the creative problem solving that no system could replicate, those stayed with her. Those should have been her entire job. The rest, every task that only required her time, not her thinking, those were candidates for removal from her personal workflow. Client inquiry management, automated. The initial response, the qualification questions, the scheduling of the consultation, none of that required her to be the one doing it. A well-built system could handle the entire top of the client funnel without her involvement. Booking confirmations and logistics coordination, automated. The client-facing communication at every stage of a completed engagement, the confirmations, the reminders, the check-ins, the post-engagement follow-up, structured, systematized, and removed from her personal queue. The administrative layer of the entire client cycle, which had consumed roughly a third of her working week for years, stopped requiring her time. When those tasks stopped requiring her time went somewhere else. To consultations, to relationships, to the work that only she could do, that clients specifically sought her out to do, that commanded the rates that made the business worth building. January of this year produced 33% of her entire prior year's revenue in 1 month. Same owner, same skills, same market, same expertise that clients had always valued, different systems. That is what changed when we removed the operational ceiling from a business that had been constrained by it for years. 3 things I want you to take from this. First, the ceiling most service business owners are hitting is not a skill ceiling. It is not a capacity ceiling in the sense of needing to hire more people. It is a system ceiling. You are not running out of expertise. You are running out of time. You are spending it on tasks that do not require your expertise and do not pay you at the rate your expertise commands. Those are different problems with completely different solutions. Hiring more people to handle more of what you personally handle solves the wrong problem. Building systems that remove those tasks from anyone's personal bandwidth solves the right one. Second, the tasks consuming your time are not necessarily the tasks you think they are. Most owners I work with believe they are the bottleneck in 1 or 2 specific places. When we actually map the full operation, every task, every touch point, every place the business requires a human to touch it, the actual picture is almost always much broader than the owner recognized. The individual tasks are small. The accumulation across a week is not. Until you map it with the discipline to account for every hour, you cannot see it clearly, and you cannot fix what you cannot see. Third, this shift is not about replacing what you do. It is not about making yourself irrelevant or reducing your involvement in your business. It is about making sure that what you actually do, the time you spend, the energy you put in, the judgment you apply, is only on the things that only you can do. The owner's job in a well-built service business is to be the directing intelligence, the highest leverage thinker, the relationship holder, not the person who personally approves every confirmation and handles every follow-up because no one else has been set up to do it. The directing intelligence is the person who sees the patterns that nobody else is positioned to see, makes the calls that cannot be systematized, holds the client relationships that the business depends on, and ensures the quality standard is maintained even when they are not the one executing the work. That is a full-time job. It is also the highest leverage job in the business. Most owners are doing it in the margins, after the admin, after the follow-up, after the coordination is done, when their best thinking has already been spent on tasks that did not require it. The owners who make this shift do not work less. Most of them work just as many hours. But the nature of those hours changes entirely. They stop spending time on tasks that drain them and produce marginal output. They start spending time on work that is actually worth what they charge. The business grows because the person at the center of it is finally doing the job the business actually needs them to do. In 3 years, the service businesses that made this operational shift are going to have a structural advantage that cannot be replicated through effort alone. You cannot work a well-built system. You can grind harder, you can add more hours, you can hire more people to handle more of what the system should be handling, and you will still be at a disadvantage against a business that built the operating layer correctly. The advantage is not in the technology. The advantage is in the leverage, and leverage compounds.